Yeah. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kirby Dunn. I'm the Executive Director of HomeShare Vermont, and tonight we're here for our 4th annual storytelling event. Our theme tonight for both our stories and the songs that you will hear is a shot in the arm, appropriately. So keep that in mind as you hear the stories and the songs. Tonight's event is a little different than the past 3 previous years. Everything's a little different these days, isn't it? We're at a new venue, the Double E Performance Center in Essex. They are hosting us this year, and we are thrilled to be here, so we want to thank them. This event typically is only a live event historically, but today we have a small, masked, safe studio audience with us, but most of our viewers are going to be watching us live online through a video stream thanks to the Media Factory. So we're really grateful for them to do this, and it's the first time we've done it, and we're very excited. Another change this year is this is normally our largest fundraising event of the year for HomeShare Vermont, but we decided to offer this event to everyone who wants to attend for free. And we are asking that if you would consider a donation at some point in the future. We would love to have a donation, but we want everybody to be able to share this experience tonight and this year with everyone at your leisure. So please consider a gift to HomeShare Vermont at some point in the future, if you would. One of the incentives that we have to have you consider making a gift is you will be entered. If you make a gift of $100 between now and May 31st, we will enter you into a raffle for this wonderful rocking chair. This is made by Jim Geyer in his Starksboro studio. It's a Vermont folk rocker, and for gifts that we receive between now and May 31st, we will enter you into this raffle for a drawing to win this chair. So I hope you'll consider joining and making a donation. We have viewers here today online. We have over 200 households joining us around the state of Vermont, around the country, and even around the world. So welcome to everyone from afar. We're very excited. Our farthest folks that I know of are seeing us tomorrow morning in Australia, which is really right now for them. So they're having breakfast as they watch. With no further ado, let's get this party started, and we're going to welcome the Brevity Thing.
Home is where I wanna be. Pick me up, turn me round. I feel numb, born with a weak heart. I guess I must be having fun. Less we say about it, the better. Make it up as we go along. Feet on the ground, head in the sky, it's alright. I know nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. I got plenty of time, yeah. Hey, oh, you got light in your eyes, and you're standing here beside me. I love the passage of time. Never for money, always for love. but I guess I'm already there. I come home, she lifted up her wings. I guess that this must be the plane. I can't tell one from another. Did I find you or you find me? There was a time before we were born, if someone asked, this is where I'll be, where I'll be. Hey, oh, we drifted in and out, yeah. Hey, oh, singing to my mouth, yeah. And out of all those kinds of people, you got a face with a view. I'm just an animal looking for a home. Gonna share the same space for a minute or two. And you love me till my heart stops. Love me till I'm dead. Eyes that light up, eyes up through you. Cover up the blind spots hitting me on my head. I go. Till my heart stops. Love me till I'm dead. Eyes that light up, eyes up through you. Cover up the blank spots hitting me on my head. I go. I go.
Both of my parents passed their last hours out here in this on this property, in this house, actually. And I kind of decided that I wanted to finish out my years here as well. I was here on my own for about probably 6 or 7 years without anybody else living in the house. And a point was reached not too terribly long ago when I started feeling rather insecure about being here on all my own. I can't think of any other place that I want to be, basically. I mean, I've grown up here. I'm familiar with the land and the seasons, and it's a feeling of belonging that I wouldn't have any other place. So with HomeShare, it allows me to maintain that feeling of belonging.
In the arm, and I fell in love twice. Right before that, the Christmas earlier, my brother had gotten a BB gun and a whole battalion of G.I. Joes. And as I was unwrapping my Barbies and my Easy Bake Oven, I looked at this collection of toys and I thought, this is somehow going to end badly for me. And sure enough, several months later, right before the summer, after months of planning on my part, I executed a hostile takeover of the G.I. Joes, and I stole all their clothing. And when my brother came to his room and he saw the G.I. Joes kind of naked and afraid in the corner, he was furious. He came charging down the stairs, and he was just screaming. And my father said, you know what? Let's not jump to conclusions. Now, this was surprising because just a day earlier, my father had come upon me in the woods behind our house, sprawled out in front of the Barbie camper, which I had conveniently turned into a mobile command center. And when he looked at the roof with all the moss covering it, and he found on the hood the guns that had been taped down, he peered inside the camper, and there were the Barbies, lined up, ready for battle. My father just looked at me and he said, "There appears to have been a coup." My dad got me. So the next afternoon, my brother was so mad about this, not just because of the theft, but because of my father's complicity, that when I was out in the back after I had stashed the mobile command center and the Barbies in a bunker, I was catching some frogs, and my brother shot me in the arm. I was raced up to my grandparents' house. My grandfather was a doctor who specialized in childhood stupidity. And so a week didn't go by that me or my brother or one of my cousins was getting stitched up in some way. And no matter what the wound was, the treatment always ended the same way, with a shot of penicillin. And so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I have now been shot in both arms in one day. This has got to be the worst day of my life. And just in that moment, my parents said, "We're going to sign you up for the library summer reading program." Now, I tried to make an argument which I thought was a pretty good argument by saying, wait a minute, I'm the victim here. Why am I being sentenced to hard time? My parents were like, "We need to have a little more structure for your summer." And so sure enough, 2 weeks later, I get dropped off at the Kings Park Public Library. And I pull over those giant wooden fortress doors to reveal Mrs. Carson, the librarian. She's sitting at the circulation desk on one of those high gunmetal swivel stools. I understand why it's called the circulation desk, because from this perch, Mrs. Carson could circulate 180 degrees in either direction. Nothing happened in the library that Mrs. Carson didn't know about. She was the woman that invented what I call the exclamation point shush. So instead of saying shh, she would say shh. She could silence you and shame you in just one utterance. It was kind of brilliant. She had this bun that her hair was pulled back into on the top of her head, and I always thought it was kind of a reflection of her soul. She would sit on her stool like a gunner in a turret, and she would just fire off. She doesn't even look at me when I walk in the library, and she just points to the children's section, the big sign that says summer reading program this way. And seated at the tiniest table, in the tiniest chair, is Candace. Candace is a summer intern from Stony Brook University in library sciences. And she's bouncy and effervescent, and she's got this little dippity-doo hairstyle, and her head sort of bobs from side to side when she talks. And she says, "Welcome, join us." And so I plop down in the pleather beanbag chair and start to pick a little hole so I can pull out some of those little styrofoam pieces. And Candace gives us the briefing. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to read a book a week, and we're going to give you a treasure map. And every week, we're going to put a stamp on the treasure map. And at the end of our time, if you've read all the books, you get the prize. The prize was a lime green T-shirt. And on the front of it, it had a big pirate ship, and on the back, it said, "Reading is a treasure." Now, in 1970s, custom T-shirts were the thing. Kids wanted to collect these. But I will say, the summer reading program T-shirt was not going to bring me a lot of social capital. But what it was going to bring me was a chance to show it to my brother, who had just a year earlier had been kicked out of the program. I was in. So the briefing finishes, kids scurry off. Candace looks at me and she says, "What do you like to read, Suzanne?" And I said, "Nothing." I was more of a doer. I kind of saw kids that read as readers. And so Candace, without missing a beat, it was almost like she mind melded me. She says, "Well, what do you like to do? Tell me about yourself." And I said, "Well, I like to catch frogs, and I like to play drums, and I've got a really annoying older brother." And she said, "I have the book for you." And she bobs off. She comes back a minute later, clutching this book to her chest as if it was breathing life to her. And she says, "I think you're going to like her." And she slowly reveals Yes, Ramona. I think in retrospect, what Candace really meant was, I think you are like her. And so I plopped myself back down in the chair, and I cracked the book open, and I started to read. And what seemed like a minute later, the bell on Mrs. Carson's desk went off. I was hooked. I turned to my book. I got it stamped. I went home. I gave the Barbies a weekend furlough, and I was in. I read that book in 2 days. I was so excited to come back. And the next week, I just burst through those doors, ready to tell Candace all about it. And there she was, sitting at the circulation desk. And I look over, and at the tiniest table in the tiniest chair is Mrs. Carson. And she says, "What did you read?" I said, "Ramona the Pest." And that was it. There were no questions. There was no explanation. She didn't really care anything about the book. And she just stamps my treasure map, and she says, "Go get another book." And so I walked into the stacks, and I waved to Candace, and Candace started to say, "How did you like the book?" But we got exclamation points shushed. And so this went on for 5 weeks. I would wave to Candace. I would read a book. I'd have to sit through Mrs. Carson. But it was kind of okay, because I got to be with Ramona for all of that time. So on the 6th week, I lost my treasure map. I think we all know who took it. I'm not going to confirm that. But I go to the library, Mrs. Carson says, "What did you read?" I tell her, she says, "Take out your map," and I tell her, I lost my map. And Mrs. Carson says, "Well, I'll give you another one, but you're only going to have 2 stamps. I said, "But what about the other books?" And she said, "Well, we don't have any documentation that you read anything else." And I said, "What about the T-shirt?" And she said, "Girls that lose their treasure maps don't get T-shirts." She had broken me. I didn't even turn in my book. I didn't get another book. I just headed out the door. The next week, I read something that was in my parents' house. I don't even know what it was, but it didn't matter because I wasn't going to get the stamp. I wasn't going to get the shirt. And so I come back to the library, and I trudge over to the children's section, and there's Candace. And she says, "Suzanne, I'm so happy to see you. What did you read?" And she didn't just mean, "What did you read this week?" She meant, "What did you read the whole summer? What did you love? What was the best adventure? And what did you think about Ramona?" And I just blurted out, "I love you. I love her." And she said, "Well, get me your treasure map." And I pull out the map that had only 2 stamps on it. And she said, "What happened?" And I tried to explain, like, the shot in the arm and the naked G.I. Joes and the Barbies and the mobile command center. And she said, "You know, it doesn't matter. Just give me your map." And she just inks her way all the way across the page. And she hands me a T-shirt. I loved that T-shirt. I wore that T-shirt everywhere, including next week to the library. And I wasn't through the door more than 2 minutes when Mrs. Carson looked at me and said, "Where did you get that shirt?" I love this moment in my life because it gave me the opportunity to understand the true meaning of the ethical dilemma. Because I could lie to Mrs. Carson, which was definitely a sin and you were going to hell, or I could rat out my friend Candace. And so I sort of landed in the middle somewhere. And basically what I said was, "I got it from a friend." And she said, "Who?" And so I said, "Betty Ann DeCandia." And now Betty Ann DeCandia was a friend, but Mrs. Carson and I both knew that Betty Ann had not spent 1 minute in the library that summer. And so we just kind of hung there in silence. And then she said, "You need to return that shirt." And so I went home, and I took the shirt off, and I wrapped it up, and I rode my bike back up to the library, and I walked into the circulation desk, and I looked at Mrs. Carson. I just pushed it across the desk. She looked at me, and she said, "You also owe us a library book." And I said, no, I turned that in. And we just sort of hung there for a moment. And then I walked out. And I thought to myself, 2 lies to a librarian in like 1 afternoon. Light the fire. I am going to hell. It took me a really long time to reconcile my complicated relationship with Mrs. Carson. And I'm still reconciling my relationship with my brother. But I'm thankful for both of them. Because if I hadn't been shot by my brother, I might have never known Mrs. Carson. And if I'd never known Mrs. Carson, I would never have known Candace. And if I'd never known Candace, I would never have known Ramona. And if I'd never known Ramona, I would never have known myself.
fall serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
The afterlife, you could be headed for a serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
People listen attentively, I mean about future calamity. I used to think the idea was obsolete, till I saw the old man bump his feet. Fire is applied to the body. For it due to that bone the ground, and the ground indicates what a pass around.
The afterlife, you could be headed for a serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
Well, beauty, talent, fame, money, time, jobs, and brains. All the things you try to hide will be revealed on the other side.
The afterlife, you could be headed for a serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay.
Well, the D and the A and the N, the A and the A and the T and the I-O-N. Through the face, through the name, like a bit of a pseudo flame. The D and the A and the M and the N and the A and the T and the I-O-N. Lose your face, lose your name, like a bit of a pseudo flame.
So my husband Ken and I had an arranged marriage. When his family moved to my hometown, our parents began playing bridge together, and they discovered that we had so much in common that we were meant for each other. And they were right. As they say in the bridge game, it was a grand slam, and we've been married for 56 years. 3 years ago, I noticed that Ken's Alzheimer's disease was progressing. He was not interested in moving. I was feeling overwhelmed by the big house, and he seemed challenged by the 21 acres of outdoor work. But we both loved the place, but he did not want to move. So I suggested that maybe we could try sharing our home. It would give us companionship, help with maintenance, and some income from rent, and he agreed. So within a few days of my contacting HomeShare Vermont, they arranged for a meeting with Jason to come to our house and see if it would work. I so well remember that meeting. There we were, silver-haired, wrinkly, wearing orthotics and spectacles. And there Jason was, younger than our kids, covered with tattoos, wearing big earrings and a big smile. The conversation was just filled with laughter. We covered topics on poetry, politics, family, and our different shared memories of the Soviet Union and Israel. It was like two books that were opening up and had similar chapters. So it was agreed that we would try the 2-week trial, and when that worked, Jason moved in permanently. The next day, he said his ex-wife said, "I have not seen you smile and laugh that much in a year and a half." And I said it was the same for me since Ken's diagnosis. The contract we co-wrote decided that whenever Jason did some maintenance for us, that he would reduce his rent. And since his main work is in maintenance, he had a vast experience and ability to do just about anything. One time Ken couldn't mow the lawn, so he did that. He replaced high light bulbs, he took out toilets, and one memorable night after a long day at work, he came and found us in consternation over the kitchen sink almost overflowing. So he cheerfully got down on the floor, took apart the pipes, solved the problem, and lowered his rent. So that was great. He's so considerate and thoughtful, and he really tunes into how Ken's feeling in the moment, and they often end up with very silly wordplay that has us all laughing. Because of his vast experience, we have fascinating conversations. One time he mentioned going on a mission trip and learning about voodoo, and I said, I don't know anything about voodoo. So he started to put forth a whole talk comparing it to Judaism and Christianity. I mean, I just don't get that much in my life, so that was amazing. We also find ways to help each other when either one of us is going through a rough spot in life and need a little feedback. And we give encouragement to each other and often do end up in chuckles. So it was kind of a shake-up last summer when Ken decided that it really was too much work to take care of the 21 acres and that he was willing to think about downsizing to a smaller place. It could have meant that Jason would be homeless, but it seemed very natural to invite him to move in with us in our new place because there was space. So he did that. The HomeShare situation is not one-sided. There are many times when either side has to give something. Jason was involved in a car accident. I think his car hit a deer and it was wrecked. So we decided to waive the rent that month, which helped him somewhat. He also asked us to pray for him when he was applying for a job that he really wanted. I did, but I thought I can do more than that. So I contacted the organization, and they allowed me to send a reference letter, which gave a different whole perspective on Jason as a person than other jobs might have. And he got the job. So Ken and I did have and do have an arranged marriage, but HomeShare Vermont also gave us an arranged friendship. And my enthusiasm for it has been so good that even one friend tried it out too. For one last story, in the beginning when we were just getting to know each other, Ken and I were up in the loft watching the news, and Jason came up and joined us. He'd had a really rough day at work, followed by a very grueling session for mediation over the divorce. When the news ended, Jason stayed and we chatted for about an hour. And when he left, I have to say I was deeply, deeply touched to hear him leaving the house whistling a happy tune.
Whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head erect, whistle a happy tune, so no one will suspect I'm afraid. Shivering in my shoes, strike a careless pose, whistle a happy tune, so no one ever knows I'm afraid. The result of this deception is very strange to tell. And I fool the people I fool myself as well. I whistle a happy tune, and every single time, happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid.
So, home. I looked it up, really, because I play a lot of Scrabble, and I'm often trying to talk my way into using words like wend. Wend was a Scrabble word. And I found out that it means to find your way towards something. So I looked up home. And home has a lot of associations to it, a lot of ways of defining. One of those is a transitive verb of home, which when I looked it up was about, the example was that creeks and pools home cranes in. So it sort of pulls them. It's like the thing and the need talk to each other. And I think that's part of home. So as I was thinking about home, I was thinking about how many kindly intentioned people have tried to help me find home, to be home, to feel at home. So I began to connect with that and think about how when I see the love in my girlfriend's eyes, it feels like home in ways. And when I see the buoyancy of my kids when I get to do a visitation with them, that feels like home. And in many ways, all of that is descriptive of the journey of finding home at the Stones. I remember meeting Ken and Nancy, I think 2 years ago. And we were all nervous. Nancy was smiling big, like she always does, and offered probably 3 different forms of refreshment. And Ken was making jokes and trying not to stare at my tattoos. He did his best. And I was nervous too, you know. I'm sure I was stammering a bit. But we connected quickly. I had been living, the year before that, I had been living in Israel with my ex-wife and my kids, where also some very kind people tried to help me feel at home, but it wasn't the right culture. So we left, and we came to Vermont. And fast forward a year to where I'm meeting the Stones. And it was a gracious meeting. And there was a quick connection, partly because of Israel. Nancy had done an underpinning, a huge amount of work with Kids for Peace, which is an organization to help the different members of the Abrahamic religions find their way back to each other through play, through art, at the age where people can still talk more freely, kids. So we connected on that. And Ken and I connected with wit, wordplay. We've played Scrabble a few times. And it seemed like a good thing. It seemed like a workable attempt. Not all attempts are. And so we decided we'd make it a go. And I brought my stuff into the spare bedroom. My books, some clothes, a banjo. They were even welcoming of the banjo, which says a lot about their good hearts. And I tried to take up space. I learned how to make noise in a room, how to own a bed, how to relax. For me, it was a time of early sobriety, which is a very disheveled time, to say the least. Reorganizing your brain, reorganizing off time, reorganizing effort, reorganizing what it means to depend in a healthy way. And the Stones created a really workable, loving space for that. I'm also remembering when I really began to interact with Ken's reality of his brain changing his world in ways that he can't help. And the awkwardness of that. and the humor that's helped us navigate that. And I guess as I think of it, there's the juxtaposition of me finding anchors in reality and him losing his.
Got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road moves from ahead and miles and miles and miles. Just remember what your old pal said. You got a friend in me. 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 You got your troubles and I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. You stick together, we can see it through. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Some of your friends might be a little bit smarter than I am. Bigger and stronger too,
Maybe.
but none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, a friendship will never die. You gotta see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
Well, my husband died 10 years ago. I was 75 at the time. And the house was totally empty. It lost its ability to be a home. At that point, it was just a house with four walls. I'm not a person that enjoys living alone. I think I'm a pack animal. I think in my previous life, maybe I was in a wolf pack or something. I don't know. I do not like living alone. Well, before I knew about HomeShare, I was taking in people on my own. You know, I took in my friend's granddaughter and her boyfriend. And when I heard about HomeShare, that's when I really got interested, because I found out that they really vet these people before they send them over. So instead of having to worry whether or not these people would fit with my lifestyle and in my home and with my cats, HomeShare has taken care of all of that. So now the people that they send over have just been absolutely perfect. They're perfect matches. I was just reading, I believe it was in The Guardian in the UK, they had done a study on the number of people who are my age that live alone, that face loneliness every day, and they're miserable. And I can understand that. But since I wound up getting these people from HomeShare, this loneliness disappears.
What exactly is the purpose of middle school? Like, is it some sort of Hunger Games to see who can make it alive to the beginning of puberty? You know, I call this period of time, this prepubescent time, genetic roulette. Because not only do kids not know who they are, they don't know what they're going to become. So can you just imagine a 2 to 4 year period in your life where you don't know if you're going to be tall or short or have a chest or not, or have hair, where, or what your voice will be like, or what your nose will be like. So it's an incredibly insecure time for kids, and yet they act so cool, you know, which is kind of sad in its own way. So to tell you a little bit about what my middle school self was like, I was a quiet kid, code for wallflower. I was... use your words, Kevin. I was soft and round in shape. Back then, jeans came in slim, regular, and husky. I wore husky, but being a very smart middle school student, I erased the word husky off of the tag, so no one had any idea that I was wearing pants for bigger people. Really intelligent in middle school. My hair was a problem in middle school as well. It was very frizzy. You kind of couldn't get a comb through it, but I managed to every day. But it ended up having sort of like a puff on this side, and then a line of demarcation known as a part, and then a puff on top. So it had sort of a Gumby bozo kind of quality to it. But my hope was that my Coke bottle glasses and my very snazzy 1970s polyester clothes would really sort of kind of keep you from looking at the things I didn't want you to look at. But of course, that didn't really work. I went through all the slings and arrows of every other middle school student out there. So, you know, by now you can kind of gather I was kind of a nerdy, kind of socially awkward kid. I read a lot. That was basically my life. I went to school, and then I read pretty much a book a day, so I was really popular at the library, exactly the place you want to be popular at. If you think of Sue's story, yes, you don't really want to be popular at the library. And so I guess in some way, books were my friends. But what I really wanted was a real friend, like the kind of friend that the characters in the books I read had. I mean, basically, I really wanted a best friend. You know, a Huck Finn from my Tom Sawyer. But it's really hard to imagine having a best friend when you don't even have regular friends in the lineup that you could promote one or two of them to the best friend category. It's a little like trying to get a job when you've never worked before. You know, it's a bit challenging. Well, things changed a little bit in 8th grade. Dennis Mulligan moved to our school, and we became fast friends. To this day, I have no idea how that happened because I really doubt I initiated anything. And when I think of Dennis, I don't think he probably initiated anything. But we became very good friends. His Schwinn was as important to him as my green glitter Stingray was to me. And so our bikes were our freedom, and they were also the basis of our relationship. So we lived in different parts of town, and we would race home after school every day, and we would get on our bikes, and we would meet on Howard Street, and we would ride and talk and ride and talk and ride. And what the heck do 13-year-olds talk about all day? Like, first of all, they have nothing really that interesting to say, but I in particular had nothing interesting to say because I didn't do anything or know anybody or go anywhere. But we'd race home for dinner, and we'd come back after dinner and ride and talk some more, and this was like the best thing that had ever happened in my life. Like, I really have a best friend, finally. You know, finally, someone who wants to see me when I get to school, someone who wants to hang out with me on the weekend. It was just unbelievably wonderful. And then the end of the school year came, and Dennis's father got transferred, and he moved out of state. And I was devastated for two reasons. One, it was like because of Dennis, you know, but the other is like my worst fear was coming true, that I was going to start high school with no friends. My mother, a high school cheerleader who married the quarterback, She's like, honey, you just got to get involved. You got to join things. You got to put yourself out there. And I'm thinking, does this woman even know who I am? Like, you don't tell somebody who's like really uncomfortable and awkward, just put yourself out there. But, you know, what did I have to lose? So I was at the library, where I usually am, and on the big cork bulletin board when I walked in was a poster, "Become a bike patrol this summer. Earn money, make friends, serve your community." Yes! Oh my God, this is exactly what I needed. Make money and make friends, serve your community. Yeah, that's okay. The job said it came with a badge and a uniform. And I thought, oh, finally, something that I can actually agree to do. Now, I had no idea what a bike patrol did. I mean, I did get the job. But basically what they do is they ride their bikes around the city, and they give tickets, ones that actually have fines, to kids whose bikes aren't registered. So I thought, well, how hard could this job be? You know, it's very straightforward. I was incredibly nervous because the idea of actually like having to walk up to kids I don't know, which was pretty much every kid in our city, and, you know, ask them for their registration seemed quite intimidating. So for the first week, I decided to take it easy. I rode my bike around town, and I looked at bikes, and I looked for bikes, and I looked where bikes gather, and in the morning, and in the afternoon, and in the early evening, just trying to get kind of the lay of the land. And during that week, I felt my pride kind of lifting up. I sort of thought, like, you know, I am pleased with the leadership role that I'm taking in my town. And I would say I sat a little higher in my sparkly green banana seat on my bike. But, you know, the rubber hits the road, and you actually have to start giving out tickets. So my first 2 tickets were to my youngest sister and her best friend. They were 7 at the time, and their bikes were in the driveway, unfortunately, like, unregistered. You know, it's not my doing. It's probably my mother's fault. And so they weren't happy with the tickets, but I sort of thought, like, you know, sibling conflict is in every family, so I'm not going to really worry too much about it. But then I had to start, like, really doing my job if I want to get paid. And so I went to a playground one day, and there were a whole bunch of bikes in the bike rack, and none of them, unfortunately, were registered. And so I'm looking at all these high school kids that were hanging out on the picnic table, you know, smoking cigarettes and drinking soda or beer or whatever. And so I took out my citation book and my pen and walked over to start issuing some tickets. And it never occurred to me that I would get beaten up that day. Like, never occurred to me. It seemed like such an odd response from a bunch of high school boys who knew they were riding illegal bicycles in the city. So, but this did not kill my resolve to serve my community and make friends, although I do have to tell you, it sort of felt like serving your community was about as hard as making friends. You know, because, you know, what I came to learn is that even people who you don't give tickets to beat you up. And then there's the things that people throw at you from cars, like soda cans and cigarette butts and eggs. And even the adults. Now, I didn't give that many tickets to adults because I'm more intimidated by them and they're not on their bikes as much, but I did give a few. But the things they would say, like, you would just not repeat anywhere. And so it was hard. It was hard. And then by mid-July, you know, as luck would have it, you know, somehow my bike got stolen, which still confuses me to this day. So I had to go on foot patrol, which you can't cover as much territory if you're walking. But also, you know, when you start realizing that your job is to give things to people that make them unhappy, there is something nice about having a bike to get away versus to sort of waddle, you know, away in your non-husky jeans. So I grew weary, you know. I loved being a paid public servant. You know, I was pretty sure the mayor never went through anything like I went through. But I ended up sort of quitting the job about the beginning of August. But then I was right back in the place I had never wanted to be in, is starting high school alone. So that first week of high school was awful, just awful. Because when you're 14 and you've got this going on and you got this going on and this is in navy blue double knit pants, you know, you can't hide in a high school anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. And so I, of course, came home crying, and my mother, rah, sort of like, why don't you try out for a team? Why don't you audition for a show? Why don't you join a club? And one of the things that I really like about being young and naive then is that there is no limit to how many times you'll just do the same stupid things over and over and over again. But I did join the track team to help. And I joined the Key Club, which that was an organization that helped high school students become good citizens. I wasn't really quite sure I was committed to citizenship anymore. I'd sort of had enough of city politics. But I made friends. I ended up joining other teams, other clubs. I ran for student council, was elected 3 times. I actually had quite a good high school experience, believe it or not. I still got beat up a lot, but that was for being gay, which I expected that. I just didn't expect you'd get beat up for tickets, for illegal activity. But when I look back to those high school years, one of my big takeaways is that if you have friends, you can pretty much get through anything, even a pandemic. Thanks.
I said, hey kids, how about some free advice? Let's say your prospects are low, the hair on your face will not grow, and you ain't got no friends. Maybe an opportunity comes along, perhaps it even pays a sum. But if it involves charging your peers with fines and misdemeanors, I gotta tell you, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, you thought you knew how low you could go, but trust me, you don't know this low. Don't do it. Yeah, you thought you knew how low you could go, but trust me, you don't know this low. Don't do it. Yeah, you thought you knew how low you could go, but trust me, you don't know this low. Don't do it.
Well, that was the fastest hour on the planet, wasn't it? That was truly a shot in the arm. Truly a shot in the arm, have to say. I really want to thank Sue and Kevin, Peggy and Nancy and Jason and Phil for those amazing stories. They were really from the heart, and I'm so glad we were all together online and in person to share those stories. We also want to thank the band. I was sitting there thinking that you should be selling out the Flynn. You guys are like so incredible, and we're so glad that more people get to hear your music, and thank you for doing this, and it's so fun to see Sue up here too, doing that. Thank you. We are recording this event, so it's live right now, but we will have it on our website, on our YouTube page for the public viewing, and at a future date and time. And we will have this on public access TV in Vermont, and so other people can experience what we've experienced here today. So thank you for that. And then my last pitch is to have you consider making a gift, a donation to HomeShare Vermont if you can. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for sharing. Thank you, guys.
Went along with it, you wasn't pretty. Went along with it, came back to me. Went along with it, it's gone too long, and I can't believe I'm still singing this song. Everybody, we gotta move on. Everybody, don't this just seem wrong? Everybody, it's just someone else, but I gotta go by myself and see the writing on the wall. And don't wait too long. Don't wait too long. All of this talking, who are we fooling? It's going nowhere. This is so grueling. All of this talking, we just can't get on. So the minute got your tongue. Then I see the writing on the wall. And don't wait too long. Don't wait too long. Listen to it, it isn't pretty. I listen to you, you talk back to me. I go along with this, gone too long, and I can't believe I'm still singing this song. Everybody, we gotta move on. Everybody, yeah, go put your shoes on.